Hello and welcome to the MudRoom, our weekly uncommon sense parenting class for parents of toddlers and preschoolers. So how is everybody doing this evening? I'm just going to pop this into the posse, and while I'm doing that, I would love for you to go ahead and say hi. Let me know you're here. Let me know how you're doing. If you're shy, just give me a thumbs up in the reactions. And definitely go ahead and use that share button to share this with a mama or a daddy friend of yours and invite them to join us. This is something that you know that they've been dealing with recently. I'm just going to get this going into the posse so that nobody gets lost. You may have noticed a bit of a change of scenery here. And if you follow me on Instagram stories, you likely know why. I finally got my office back. I've spent the last week painting and I got some new lights, which I'm still kind of figuring out. We've still got kind of a shadow going on back here. I just got a new chair and I'm not quite all moved in yet. I've still got a bookcase that I need to get in here. I've got this beautiful bookcase that my grandmother left me, and I have a giant whiteboard that I'm just jonesing to install. And I've got some custom decal work going on back here. But the important parts are all here. So I finally have, there's a bit of an echo going on here, I'm starting to notice too. So we need some more soft furnishings. But I finally have a private space with a door to work in. I gave up this room when I found out that my youngest Owen was on the way so that he could have a private place to sleep. But we moved them into the same room about 3 weeks ago now. So everybody's alive. Everybody's alive and getting decent sleep. So I went ahead and I took back my space. Okay, Facebook is going very slow tonight. I'm not sure what's up. Hey, Nicole! All right, we're just gonna pop this into the posse and we're gonna get going, guys. There we go. Right as rain. Okay. All right, so welcome. For those of you who are new around here, let me introduce myself. My name is Allana Robinson, and I'm a parenting effectiveness coach and child behavior strategist, and I help parents of infants, toddlers, and preschoolers understand why their children are misbehaving and what to do about it without yelling, shaming, or using timeouts. So what is our topic today? There's a little bit of a backstory to today's topic. Every day in the Parenting Posse, which is my free peer support Facebook group. If you're not a member, absolutely go join. We have a daily prompt and it gets posted every day, every weekday. I find that they help us to get to know each other as members, and it gives kind of a low barrier of entry way for new members to start posting. So last Tuesday, the prompt was, what does your child do that's irritating you? And a member, Caitlin, responded that her son keeps hitting himself and she doesn't get when he doesn't get what he wants. And she doesn't get why he's doing that. And it was really driving her up the wall because it didn't make any sense to her. And I've kind of talked about this in like dribs and drabs with various members since I opened the group in 2014, but I wanted to do an actual class on it because it's not a topic that we discuss really openly generally, and I want to put an end to that. Usually when parents observe their kids self-harming, they're ashamed or they feel like they're doing something wrong, so they tend not to talk about it. But there's a reason that little kids, and we're talking toddlers and preschoolers here, self-harm. And once you see it for what it is, it's a pretty easy fix in the grand scheme of things. All right, so generally how this plays out. you're giving your child a direction, or you're denying them something that they want, or you're trying to get them to do something for you, right? You're trying to get them to make a transition, and usually they start by refusing. Then they escalate to screaming. And finally, they escalate to self-harming by hitting themselves, biting themselves, headbutting the wall, scratching themselves, etc. And kids can get pretty creative about this. What you may have observed is that over time, the precursor behaviors, the refusal and the screaming, diminish, and then they skip straight to self-harm. And if your child has ever done this, drop me a hands up emoji or an eye in the comments. Let's be really open about this. Nobody is judging you here. Hey, Kristen. So the first thing that we need to understand about self-harm is this. For young children, this is a sensory strategy. What happens when you get upset? For me, my heart starts to pound. I can hear it in my ears. I get very, very cold or very, very hot, depending on whether I'm sad or mad. My throat goes dry. I get a lot of pressure behind my eyes. My stomach clenches, my teeth clench, and 9 times out of 10, I have the urge to hit something. And that's how extreme anger or sadness manifests itself in my body. That's how it physically feels to me. Now imagine that feeling in a little kid of 2 or 3 or 4. That would be pretty overwhelming, wouldn't it? And as a toddler or a preschooler who still doesn't have that really strong emotional control area of executive functioning, or in the case of a 1-year-old, doesn't have any executive functions yet, it could easily be overwhelming to the point where you don't know how to cope. So when this happens with auditory input, when there's a cacophony of sound that you can't escape and it's overwhelming to the point where you can't cope, you scream. Because the sound coming from your own body is always going to be louder than anything else around you. So it's going to drown it out. That's why moms have such a hard time stopping yelling when their kids are all talking over each other with demands and you're trying to focus on all these competing voices. Not just because yelling gets everyone's attention, which it does, and not just because it makes you louder than everybody else, which it also accomplishes, and not just because it shows that you really mean business, which is also a reinforcing factor, but because on an auditory sensory level, it's the only way to cope. When you yell, as loud as it is to everyone else, it's even louder in your own ears. It creates an overwhelming singular sound to focus on, and that gives you relief from all the competing sounds that were assaulting you before. This is why when young children are learning to soothe themselves to sleep, they often scream themselves to sleep. It's called audio filtering. You can drown everything else out so that you can focus your mind on one thing. It's why white noise is so helpful for inducing sleep. Hey, Madeline. So same concept, only take it out of the auditory and apply it to the physical. When we're feeling so many conflicting things in our bodies, including shame, because most kids know that they aren't supposed to be reacting this way. And the fact that they feel the physical manifestations of those emotions, even though they're trying to control them and react appropriately, causes more emotions and physical manifestations of those emotions, and it's a self-perpetuating cycle. The instinct is to create one overwhelming physical sensation to focus on and to drown everything else out. So for instance, if I'm feeling fiery rage and my throat is dry, which is like the worst feeling in the world. And I have pressure behind my eyes and my gut is clenching and my teeth are clenching. And I've got the urge to hit something, but I know that I'm not supposed to hit something. I might bite my cheek so hard that I make myself bleed. Or I might smack myself in the face. Or I might bite my arm really hard. Because then I'm focused on the actual pain versus all those psychosomatic symptoms that are overwhelming me. And since there's only one thing to focus on, I'm then able to focus and calm myself down. Does this make sense? It's the same reason, obviously more extreme, as teenagers who cut themselves. So obviously we don't want it to get to that stage. We want to nip this in the bud before it gets that far. So what can we do about it? If your child is doing this, what can you do to nip it in the bud before they become that teenager who's cutting themselves? The first thing is to give them something that they're allowed to do to express those feelings, that frustration or that overwhelm. This is why I have a punching bag in my basement. Because I feel the need to hit something when I'm angry. And obviously there's very few things that are acceptable to hit. But a punching bag is one of them. My sons don't fall very far from the tree either. They're also a bit slap happy, so they use it too. If your child is a biter, you might want to grab them a really firm, chewy tube. Or if they're a head butter, redirect them to their mattress or a pillow. Try to look at what they're already doing and figure out how you can allow them to do that in a socially acceptable way. The second thing is to work on their emotional control executive skills. Now I'm getting a dry throat because it's dry in here. There's so many ways to do this, and I have a whole unit with over 40 games, activities, and interactions in the Brain Skills Play Blueprint, which is my flagship program. But since enrollment for that is currently closed, there are some nuggets in my scripts for managing crazy-making behavior from that section. And you can grab those by going to prnt.link/scripts, and it's linked in the description. The third thing is to give them the words. Give them a script to help them express and to communicate to you what it is that they're feeling and what they're overwhelmed by. For my kids, that's "Mama, I'm over it." When I hear "I'm over it" come out of my kid's mouth, I know that my kids are like just about ready to blow, and I need to either back off and give them some space or to redirect them. Kind of like a code phrase. I don't use "I'm sad" or "I'm mad" or "I'm upset" or "I'm overwhelmed," because typically those things are things that your kids will say to others. And if the other people don't react how you react when they're just having everyday conversations, it's going to be confusing and possibly even more upsetting to them. So "I'm over it" is what I've taught my kids to say when they're just done. And when I'm giving them coping strategies and I'm working on their emotional control, that's how we talk about it. These things help when we're sad, angry, or over it. And I find that it helps them distinguish between, run-of-the-mill sadness, run-of-the-mill frustration or anger, and that hitting the wall overwhelmed feeling. I know that as a parent, if your child does this, you're probably panicking right now because this is scary. But the best thing that you can do is meet this head on and pour on the support now, because it's fairly easy to tackle it when they're little. Give them some coping methods, heap on the emotional support, teach them how to ask for help, and continue to support that open communication and open exchange of emotion. If they do self-harm, redirect them in a safe way to express themselves, and model being gentle with their bodies. If we front load them with these skills so that we never go down that scary path when they're older and have way more resources open to them that can do real harm, we're really going to help cut this off at the knees. And of course, if you're ever worried about your child's ongoing mental health, the best person to talk to is a healthcare professional. Never be ashamed of reaching out and asking for help, and don't shut up until someone listens, because your kids are absolutely worth it. So I won't keep you guys any longer. I hope that you learned something. And if you're watching, I'd love for you to give this video a thumbs up. If you're listening to the podcast version of this, I would love it if you would rate and subscribe. Let others know what you think. If you aren't a member of the Parenting Posse, I would love it if you would join us. You can do that by going to my Facebook page and clicking on the Join Group button, which is up at the top. Okay, does anybody have any questions before I head out? I think that's it. Thanks for hanging out with me this evening, and I will see you guys again next week for another Uncommon Sense parenting class. Oh, Madeline has a question. Okay, can you explain more about why your kids say I'm over it? That's their way of telling you that they're about to blow? Yes, Madeline. So if my son goes out into the world, he goes to kindergarten, let's say, and he says and I've taught him to say that, I'm mad, I'm angry, as an indication that he's just like so done, right? We know that feeling of, I cannot cope anymore, and I'm D-O-N-E, done. And so if I've taught him to say, I'm mad, or I'm angry, or I'm frustrated when he's feeling that way, most people aren't going to read that as an extreme emotion, right? They're going to read it as, okay, you're mad, you're frustrated. Okay, well, what can we do when we're mad? We can stomp our feet, right? He's past that at that point. He's not stomping his feet and screaming into a pillow. We're not going to do it for him anymore. He's done. He's going to hit a wall. He's so overwhelmed that he cannot cope, and he needs a lot more support than screaming into a pillow. So for my kids, the indication that they're approaching that limit is I'm over it. I've had other kids who just say, I'm done, and that's cool too. I've had other people who are like, I had one little boy who had a really cool saying, but it's completely escaping me right now. Damn it, I can't remember it right now. But it doesn't really matter what it is, as long as you can kind of say to a caregiver or a teacher, if he says he's over it, like that's the limit. Over it is the limit for him. And for him, if he's like, we're in a public situation, we were at a birthday party the other night, and he came to me and he was like, Mommy, I'm getting over it. And I was like, okay, let's go. Right? That wasn't the time for me to be like, okay, let's talk about it, or, oh, would you like some cake, or, oh, do you just want to sit on my lap? No. He was over it. He was done. So we were going to go right now. Let's go. Let's get your shoes on. Let's go. So that's why I have that kind of extra emotion for him. There's sadness, there's anger, there's frustration, and there's being over it. I hope that explained it. Caitlin says, my kid was going to bed at this time. Oh, that's okay, Caitlin. There's going to be a replay, and it'll be uploaded to the podcast. Madeline said, got it. They're telling you that they're at their wit's end. Yeah, and that was it. I worked for the little boy, and he would say that. He would say, I'm at my wit's end. And that's exactly it. His family was British, and I was like, damn it, what is that saying? So that, yes, you're right. That would be a self-monitoring thing, but it would also be an emotional control thing, because he's getting to that point where he is going to lose his emotional control. So he's holding it together, right? That's his indication to me that I'm holding it together, but my grip on that is slipping, right? That was a great question. My kid yells bye. That's a great thing. You know, if you can communicate that to a caregiver or to a kindergarten teacher where they're like, hey, so he just yells bye and like leaves the room. You're like, yeah, that's when he's going to lose it. That's great, right? As long as you have a way to differentiate like run-of-the-mill anger, sadness, and frustration from hitting the wall. Yeah, I love that. Bye. Okay. So that, I think, is it for me this evening. And I will see you again next week for another Uncommon Sense parenting class. Thanks so much for being here, guys. Have a great evening. Bye.